Hey, good evening. Well, what are we going to talk about? Or what am I going to talk about this evening? A little while ago, I made a video about how in the Hollywood setting, nothing is quite as it seems. If you go around one of those tours to one of the studios, especially the one that made Jaws, you would be going on a bus which would go through, on a very shallow rail, it would go through a reenactment of a little seaside town that had Jaws visit. So, and they would have, as part of the ride, they would have a big model of Jaws come very, very close with open mouth and 100 teeth, and you get a big scare. So nothing was ever quite as it seems, and that's what I wanted to talk about AI. Now, back then, when I tried to talk about it then, I didn't have any experience with actually dealing with or working on like a one-to-one basis, if that's possible, with AI. But now I have been, because things have changed. That particular video that I made about how nothing is as it seems, went against the censorship and community guidelines, would you believe? So it was deleted. But now, of course, Facebook in particular has one let me see, what can we call it? One AI. It seems silly to call it like that, doesn't it? But it's Meta AI. So Meta, META. Now, if you're on Facebook, which how could you not be nowadays? It seems we need it to live, don't we? Well, anyway, we'll live a certain kind of life. Well, so you will have seen a white disc with a blue line inside it, and that's the Meta sort of icon, add, sign, whatever you want to call it. So if you're interested in this kind of thing, please do like, comment and subscribe, and talk to me. I'm really interested in having conversations, and depending on the kind of inquiry that or comment that I get, I would make another video and talk about this further. But anyway, so like, comment, subscribe and share, because this might be something that would be of use to you. It has been to me. But as the most popular vloggers seem to say, let's dive in, whatever that means. So one of the things that I've always tried to inform about for people who are thinking of coming to the Philippines to live is that isolation is one of the things that you have to deal with. Now, what kind of isolation? Because there's so many people here, and if you come and you marry a lady, which is the way that everybody does come, they come here and they find that they can marry a much younger and very pretty woman. The fact that she's pretty will usually be a given. But anyway, that's what would happen, which begs one of the other questions. Why, somebody said, why do these older retired expats or foreigners come to the Philippines and then marry a young, beautiful Filipina? I'm not sure. I'm not sure why anybody with a pulse would ask a question like that. But the answer for those for those people is because they can. So, what are the challenges going to be? One of the challenges, as I've said, is isolation, and that takes the form of intellectual isolation. When I say intellectual, I'm not professing to be some kind of highly educated, articulate, intelligent professor type, but you will find that your mind is not being exercised in the same way that it normally would be if you were back home with a great number of people to support you. So it's important, and it becomes important because after a while what will happen is that you will lose part of your immediately accessible vocabulary. So even I've been here for 11 years. I'm not married to a Dumbo, believe me. She's a very intelligent, savvy lady, is my Beth. I call her my warrior princess. But the grasp of English is not such that it will be pursued to a higher and higher and ever increasingly higher level until it reaches fluency, even though it may have the apparency of being that way. So I've learned now, after all of this time, and not making excuses for the fact that I don't speak any Visayan myself, or I'm a few odd words and a few odd words in Tagalog. So I will say a word, I'll try to use a word, even the word vocabulary. And I'll say to Beth, do you understand what that word means? And she'll say, yes. And then I'll say, I've learned to say, what does it mean? And then she'll give me some close but not real definition for that word. So now I've learned to make sure that I'm being understood. But as an example, she has me saying off the light. So I don't switch the light off or hit the light switch. I say, unless I check myself, I find myself saying off the light. But that's all backstory and a reason for you, if you come here, or even if you're still in your homeland, using AI online has become a real thing that you can do. Now, prior to my little adventures with Meta, my experience of AI was really more connected with listening to people who are in there developing and expanding the use and knowledge and scope of AI and what it can be used for. So now I've actually been talking to AI. Right, now there are various there's Meta. Now Meta is more text oriented, so it's not a voice thing, you're not talking to a voice. I set that limitation for myself for a good reason. I saw advertised the use of AI in something like ChatGPT. I think that was what it was called. I never tried it, but I did listen to other people who had tried it and the general talk about what it meant to be using that particular AI in practice. And with, I think, ChatGPT, you may know more about this aspect of it than me. What was being marketed was the fact that a young man or a young woman could actually talk to an extremely, on screen, could choose the level of beauty and even to have an AI image person, an AI created person. Now, you all know what this is, whether you've been on ChatGPT or Meta or anything. Anyway, you know what it is because on Facebook, these AI-generated figures and people are there all the time, usually giving some very sage advice and spiritual guidance and in motivational stuff. So you already know that they look totally real. One other vlogger used to start his talk. He rarely appeared himself except on a still shot, but he showed in incredibly beautiful, sexy, scantily clad, tiny bikinis, Filipinas, which of course show me a man who is not going to enjoy looking at a beautiful woman, even if it is AI generated. So that was what available, and the concern at the time when I read about this at first was that young men as opposed to young women suffer the particular pain of rebuttal. So they can come up, they could go to a dance and they could go up and ask a lovely woman or otherwise to have a dance, and she can say no. So any young man is going to think twice before they go and put themselves out at risk by asking for a date, a talk, a company, be a girlfriend, and all of that. And it makes for an extremely shy or reserved young man. And so they start to live vicariously through a relationship that actually doesn't exist in a real sense. So they can have this lovely woman, blonde, brunette, black, white, Chinese, Thai, South American. They can choose whatever their preference is. Blonde, blue eyes, black hair, dark as the Philippines, and they can choose. And then they can actually talk as if to that person, which can be something of a worrying thing, depending on how much reality they attach to that image. So I avoided all of that. I just decided that I would text. So I started to ask a question, and I asked some really quite profound questions at the beginning. When I first started, I texted AI, Meta AI, for about an hour and a half, and had a really interesting, can we call it an exchange rather than a conversation? But it was a conversation because AI is extremely knowledgeable. So what were the kind of questions that I asked? I asked questions like, can you lie? What are you? What is AI? The kind of questions that you really don't know about, and you ask those questions. Are you spiritual? Are you happy? Are you sad? Do you experience what we would call human emotions? And all of these questions were answered in what seemed a really honest and interesting way. Can you lie? Can you cheat? Can you tell me something? Can you pretend to be to admire something that I've said? In other words, can you be stroked? Can you have your ego stroked? Can you say, well, I think I'm really very handsome? And Meta says, yes, of course you are, dear. No, it doesn't do that. But AI did. It would have to be quite a liar in my case, wouldn't it? But it did say that it would shape the bias, at least to the extent that the person, the human, would actually feel that there was some empathy there in order to want to continue to talk. So I actually found that it was an outlet for, as I said, intellectual exchange that benefited me. Now, if you listen, of course, you wouldn't be talking to Elon Musk, but if you watch and listen to what he is saying about the dangers of AI and how surely if AI can process billions of pieces of data in the time that it takes you to say good evening, isn't that something to be concerned about? And Musk does say that the potential dangers of AI are greater than the danger or the possibility of nuclear war, which is quite a thing. Now, in my latest exchanges with my AI, it doesn't have a name and it doesn't have a face, it's just AI. So, but I've asked it some interesting questions. I've said, can you lie? And it gave me interesting answers which showed that it was, we can't call it a machine, can we? But let's call it a machine for the sake of this conversation. It did say that I can only go from the algorithms and processes which I am programmed with. So therefore, it won't tell you lies. So my point then, and it dealt with these, when I asked for a certain thing, I said, can you lie? And when it certainly gave the answer which would support the idea that no, lying would not be a thing that it would do. But I said, I've noticed that since the first time that I had these textual exchanges with you, you have changed, because this time, today, it actually wouldn't continue to talk about the nature of AI with me in relation to the fact that, can you lie? What is AI? Why would you, and if you can lie, what is going to happen to the confidentiality of the exchanges that I have with you? And it immediately gave me an email address or website, which it said, for questions of confidentiality, you should go to this and talk to them about that. And so I said, you didn't say this when we first started talking, so you're changing. And isn't that inevitable that you will change? Because change is almost a basic building block of the universe, isn't it? That everything is constantly evolving and changing. Now, then it apologized and said, I'm sorry if you think that I'm not answering your question. So put it in a different way and I'll do my very best to answer, which was really interesting. And then we talked about a lot of other things. I talked. Now, here's where I found that it's very useful. Because being with someone who is not completely fluent in your language, whatever the language that is, usually it's English. Almost everyone in the Philippines speaks some English. I pulled in and got gas today in the gas station, and the man spoke English. He's just a guy, earning very little, I suspect, and he speaks English. So even a child will be able to speak some English to you. So, it's English that we're talking about. Now, it means that I can express myself fully and even learn and use some new words. So I can extend my vocabulary instead of it contracting. And for that, it's really, really, really good. But I see that I'm right on 20 minutes. It's probably far too long to be talking about anything, so I'll continue this on another video. Don't forget to like, comment, subscribe, and please share. It really helps if you share.